and you are well poised to do well in this youth parliament because you are well researched and well prepared. For that, I tell you, congratulations for what you have done so far. I urge all of you to exercise respect for the rules of the House. You need to show a high level of tolerance and maturity in the course of the debate. Always, I say always, show respect to your colleagues during the debate. You are continuing your journey of leadership in this beloved country of ours. So do not give up easily. Fight for what you believe in. Fight for what you want. And in so doing, help build a better Dominica where all of us can enjoy a prosperous life. It is you that we rely on for the future of Dominica. But a journey begins, the 1,000 steps in a journey begins now. But I am fully aware, and you are aware, and Dominicans across our island are aware that you have already started that journey. I firmly believe that in respect to development of a country, anywhere in the world, it is really about your country first. Your country first. So, during the course of the debate, I would like you to always remember that it is Dominica first. We may be ambitious, and it is good, but we have to always remember we are doing this for Dominica. In this leadership journey that you have already begun, you need to capture the moment of effecting change. What do I mean by that? In this debate, what we are looking for is objectivity. Yes, passion, but in a sober way. In every argument or discussion in life, in philosophy, the question is what is right and what is wrong. And that's why we are here today, to hear you debate. Those of you on the proposing side will be arguing that what you are saying there is the right way to go. But there is always an alternative view. And that's why he said, what is right, what is wrong? It is about respectful debate. Respectful debate. Debate with honor. Debate well researched. Debate not for just the sake of debate, but debate with an end game. And the end game is, what is the best for Dominica? What is the best for Dominican youth? What is best for the elderly? What is best for the masses? And every time, as we progress and evolve in a society, what might be best today might not be the best tomorrow. Because we have a changing world. So today, you are in the right place, at the right time, among the right people. So I'm asking you to seize this sacred opportunity. Seize this sacred opportunity. Because in you, here this morning, I see future parliamentarians, and most likely, I see a future prime minister or future president of this country. I'd like to once again welcome everyone here this morning who have shown a keen interest in coming here to support you, the youth. And I would also want to welcome you, because you have already begun your journey. It is just the beginning of what is to come for you. You have great things ahead of you. So I would like to once again, congratulate you and welcome you in this honorable house. Thank you. Yes, I would like to now call on Mr. Firelander to give remarks. Mr. Firelander is the chairperson of the National Youth Parliament. The Youth Parliament has a proposing side and the alternative or opposing side. And each side has a leader, but we also have a chair of the Youth Parliament. Proceed, we recognize you, Mr. Fire.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Dr. Irving McIntyre, the Speaker of the House, the Honorable Joseph Isaac, the Honorable Dr. Addis King, the Honorable Octavia Alfred, other Honorable Members of Parliament, the Honorable Lennox Linton, Leader of the Opposition, Chief Youth Development Officer, Mr. John Roach, President and Executive Members of the National Youth Council of Dominica, invited guests, and of course, you, my fellow youth parliamentarians. Good morning. The 33rd President of the United States of America, Mr. Harry Truman, once proclaimed, "Men make history and not the other way around." In periods where there is no leadership, society stands still. Progress occurs when courageous, skillful leaders seize the opportunity to change things for the better, end quote. Today, my fellow members, I am beaming with joy and exuberance as we have made it. We have made the National Youth Council of Dominica organized National Youth Parliament a reality. The journey was long, but the fruit, as you will see today, will be oh so sweet. The young people spoke, and the National Youth Council joined forces with the Honorable House of Assembly and made what many once thought was impossible blossom into reality today. However, I must first take you on a journey to how we got to here, the process. Almost 3 months ago, the call for applications was launched by the National Youth Council after months of consultations, overcoming many setbacks, like the dreaded COVID-19 pandemic, celebrating the many achievements, and of course, not forgetting the many sleepless nights. We were ready to present the idea to the public for consideration. A committee of skilled and diverse representatives of the partner organizations was then established, and the selection committee, after 1 month of receiving applications and deliberation, submitted to the planning committee a list of 30 youth parliament members. You see them here today. Each youth parliamentarian was required to submit to the committee their application and had to meet the basic requirements. Applicants had to be residents or citizens of the Commonwealth of Dominica, between the ages of 16 to 35, and members of village councils, service clubs, youth organizations, or simply be an active member of the community. These basic requirements were made even more competitive as the youth parliamentarians were each required to submit to the committee a project proposal. This made the process for selection of the participants all the more difficult, but our selection committee ably faced the task at hand. The youth parliamentarians present here today should feel immensely proud of the achievement of just being selected and should use this opportunity to shine and show their worth. We are grateful for the work carried out by the committee. Thank you to the members, and we look forward to partnering with you in the not-too-distant future. Thank you to the committee chair, Ms. Luana Laura, and her team, consisted of representatives from the Youth Development Division, House of Assembly, and Ministry of Education. The journey. After selection of the youth parliamentarians, we embarked on a series of training sessions that would prepare the parliamentarians for today. Topics included debating strategies, communication and public speaking, debating to make an impact, parliamentary speaking strategies, parliamentary proceedings, and research strategies. The youth parliamentarians who met with the utmost kindness and intellect from the group of ably selected presenters who all made meaningful contributions to our development as youth parliamentarians, and for that, we say thank you. It would be remiss of me not to make special mention of the Honorable Prime Minister of Dominica, Honorable Roosevelt Skerrit, the Honorable Prime Minister of Barbados, the Honorable Mia Motley, Ambassador Elizabeth Thompson, the Speaker of the House of Assembly, the Honorable Joseph Isaac, the Honorable Ian Douglas, the Honorable Hector John, Senator Francisca Joseph, Ms. Trudy Christian, Dr. Shyla Esprit, and Dr. Kimon Joseph. Each, in their own special way, has left a lasting impact in our minds, and for that, we are thankful. Tragedy. On Saturday, 26th February 2022, less than 24 hours after being presented as National Youth Parliamentarians, we were met with news that rocked us immensely to our core. A brother to some, a friend to many, and a young man who had tremendous potential had succumbed during the wee hours of the morning. Still in shock, I rushed to the hospital, hoping that this rumor, Lord, let it be just be a rumor. Daniel Panthe was my colleague and, most importantly, a dear friend of mine. From our days working together on events at the Dominica State College, up until being appointed to serve in this honorable house as a youth parliamentarian, Daniel Panthe, I believe, was everybody's biggest fan. His smile, charisma, and gam was so infectious, you couldn't help but pay attention when that little man rose to speak. Though he was small in stature, he had a very big heart. His contributions to this house, I'm sure, would have been impactful. Daniel would not want us to be sad and wallow in dismay today, but rather rise to the occasion and remember, cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. We, the youth parliamentarians, particularly the opposing team, dedicate this first sitting of the first session of the National Youth Parliament 2022 to 2023 cohort to Mr. Daniel Panthe. Gratitude. I take this opportunity to say a special thanks to the many grant sponsors and partners who quickly jumped on board and did not hesitate to contribute to the development of our youth. Of course, the House of Assembly, led by the Honorable Joseph Isaac, Speaker of the House, the Ministry of Youth Development and Empowerment, Youth at Risk, Gender Affairs, Senior Security, and Dominicans with Disabilities, the Ministry of Education, Human Resource Planning, Vocational Training, and National Excellence, the Embassy of the People's Republic of China, the National Cooperative Credit Union, IROC Substance Pizza, Josephine Gabriel and Company Limited, the University of the West Indies, to our family and friends, the Dominican public. Without your contributions, this event would not have been possible, and for that, we are immensely grateful. So many may be asking, and many have asked, why have a youth parliament? Kofi Annan, former Secretary General of the United Nations, in his address to the World Conference of Ministers Responsible for Youth in Lisbon, 1998, once said, "No one is born a good citizen. No nation is born a democracy. Rather, both are processes that continue to evolve over a lifetime. Young people must be included from birth. A society that cuts itself off from its youth severs its lifeline. It is condemned to bleed to death." The Commonwealth of Dominica National Youth Policy 2017 to 2022, the draft, outlines a few salient points in support for the National Youth Parliament. The concept of the National Youth Parliament has been embraced globally as a viable mechanism to promote youth participation in democratic processes and active citizenship. These have served as useful platforms to accentuate young people's leadership skills and competencies. It is also a vessel to establish better appreciation for the fundamental principles and practice of parliamentary democracy. Youth parliaments are also effective tools to facilitate and nurture a healthy interest and active participation in national democratic political processes. Further, it can help foster respect for diversity, social inclusion, and solidarity among young people. Finally, a youth parliament can be considered a strategic investment and intervention in accentuating young people's roles as agents of change. Now, my call to action to my fellow members. An excerpt from the Global Youth Call to Action by the Global Center for Adaptation indicates that today, the world is home to the largest generation of youth in history, with 1.8 billion worldwide. 1.8. 1 out of 5 people globally are between the ages of 15 to 24. Nearly 90% of the global youth live in developing countries just like ours, nearly 1 billion in Asia and Africa. What does that mean for us as youth in this little part of the world? We must rise to the challenge that is being faced without fear. We must seek to put down our partisan flags when it matters and hold to the highest regard our national flag, a symbol of patriotism. We must continue to say yes to the call when it matters and take every opportunity to make meaningful contributions that will forge ripple effects into the fabric of our nationhood amongst our fellow youth. I seek to remind you, my fellow youth parliamentarians, that though we are presenting today proposing versus opposing, we, however, all are headed into the same direction toward prosperity and sovereignty for all youth in the Commonwealth of Dominica. I beg your indulgence for just a moment longer as I conclude with one of my favorite stories that was once told to me by a former teacher. An old man was doing his daily walk along the beach one morning when he spotted a young boy crouched by the water, scooping up something up from the sand and throwing it into the sea. The beach was normally empty at this time of day, and so the old man stopped to watch for a while. He noticed that the boy kept on shuffling a little further down the beach, then repeating the same action again and again, stopping, scooping, throwing, moving. He then asked, "What are you doing there, boy?" The boy replied, "I'm saving these starfish that are stranded. If they stay on the beach, they will dry out and die. So I'm putting them back into the ocean so they can live." The old man, in awe, then said, "Young man, on this stretch of beach alone, there must be more than 100 stranded starfish. Around the next corner, there must be at least 1,000 more. This goes on for miles and miles and miles. I've done this walk every day for 10 years, and it's always the same. There must be millions of stranded starfish. I hate to say it, but you'll never make a difference." The boy replied, "Well, I just made a difference for that one starfish," and continued with his work. My dear young people, do not be daunted by the task that people tell you that you are not able to be great. I've told you throughout this process, you are great, you are already great, and continue to be great. Don't let anyone tell you that you cannot make a difference, because it was once said that the youth can never reach in parliament as a sitting parliament, and today we shall leave them with their mouths dropped. Thank you very much.
Before we continue with the Honorable Minister, I would like to also specifically recognize the presence of the Honorable Ian Douglas, the Honorable Fidel Grant, the Honorable Oscar George, the Honorable Gregory Riviere. Though we did not specifically invite ministers of government, except for those who are to present this morning, I'm happy to see you guys here this morning. Also, we have officials from the Ministry of Education, the Community Development Division, specifically in terms of working with the team. Miss Rule, I know you a long time, so I can't remember the marriage last name now, but Miss Rule, Miss Hyacin, that's young Hyacin, not the father or the mother. So I just wanted to recognize them, because we need to ensure that people, did I miss out any name, Mr. James? Yes, I also see Ambassador Greg were here, I think Ambassador Gregory, I know Ambassador Gregory from grammar school days, always showing an interest in the youth. I think your son is here this morning, Ambassador. Also, I just want to make a comment to the general public. Because of the social distancing and the protocol, we had to limit. That's why we did not invite too many people. And also, we did not want to invite members of parliament and have senior members sitting upstairs. So, but I still think that members should come in and touch base with the young people, and also parents, you can come in, touch base with your children while they present and give them the support. You know, so I just wanted to just point that out and really thank everyone who have in one way or another contributed to this event there this morning. So without further ado, I would like to call on the Honorable Octavia Alfred, the Minister with responsibility for education, young resource planning, vocational training, and national excellence to deliver remarks. Minister, your mic, it's on?
Yes.
Okay.
Dr. McIntyre, who will be representing the Prime Minister, Honorable Lennox Linton, Leader of the Opposition, Dr. Addis King, Minister of Youth, other members of Cabinet, members of Parliament, Mr. Lander, the Chairperson of the Youth Parliament, members of the National Youth Parliament, invited guests, the media. Mr. Speaker, good morning. The establishment of a youth parliament expands the national democracy and the inclusion of a group that is usually asked to be seen and not heard too often. And today we are placing you in a prominent space. Data shows that all around the world, young people are excluded, underemployed, underpaid, and among the largest group of unemployed persons. By giving you, the young people of Dominica, greater visibility, agency, and advocacy in the country's affairs through youth parliament, plus added to other policies for education, training and decent work, jobs, technology access, sports and property ownership, we are opening up a new path for Dominica's youth to serve to keep a viable national population by contributing your skills, energy, and talents to the national cause. You may not know that, but you are now engaging in offering a service to the public. So welcome to public service. This is a very honorable thing to do, and at least for the next hours, embrace the opportunity to address each other as honorable and to accept being addressed as honorable. Bring your youthful energy, your vision, and your innovation to your commentary as you address public policies. I expect you to be addressing issues of women, the elderly, and youth in your policy decisions, and I hope your perspective is given ventilation in the public domain. The discussion of the Youth Parliament should be at a high level and should enrich the national discourse with new ideas, suggestions, and a new vision for the country, since you too must add your voice as to how you view and what you aspire to in dynamic Dominica. You are role models, and you must set the standard for future youth parliament. This is a unique opportunity for decision makers at every level of government to hear the concerns of young people and take action. Young people have strong feelings about the kind of society they wish to live in. Now, small size is not a bar to innovation or leadership. As it was the Prime Minister who declared at the United Nations after Hurricane Maria that Dominica would become the first climate-resilient nation in the world. As the citizens of a small island developing state, Dominica's youth must look for ways in which they can bring innovative solutions to the national problems and create opportunities for global leadership and foreign exchange and income earning. The Youth Parliament can now bring the manifesto provision to life by initiating our annual hackathon, bringing together tech experts, graphic specialists, social scientists, and others to design solutions around specific climate change and national development challenges to develop tech solutions as part of the national thrust in innovation. You'll find that on page 27 in our manifesto. The evidence is clear that increased youth participation and leadership in all fields and in political decision-making helps build safer, more inclusive, and more harmonious society. If we acknowledge and invest in your role as peace actors as well as development actors, young people will be game changers to prevent breakout of conflict. And I speak thinking about what's going on in some parts of the world now. Where more young participants in the political conversation, greater attention is paid to issues like health, education, infrastructure, ending child abuse and violence against women, and overall quality of life concerns. These issues are all central to the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals and illustrates how Goals 1 to 5 on ending poverty in all forms, zero hunger, health, achieving gender equality and empowering all women and girls, and water and sanitation are fundamentals for all the other goals, including Goal 16 of just peaceful and inclusive societies. Therefore, I encourage you with some tips that have worked magic for me. 1, it's just easier to stay in your comfort zone and avoid risk. However, great things never come from being average, so you have to strive for extraordinary. 2, when you show courage in the face of adversity, you change your life and you change things for others. 3, don't take inspiration from great speakers only, but take inspiration from people who have experienced difficulty, but they didn't give up. Need to tell me if you still go ahead.
Let us suspend the House for about 5 minutes, or 5 to 10 minutes. And an honorable minister, you'll continue. So, House stands suspended, or someone should move a motion?
I move a motion that the House be suspended for 10 minutes.
It has been moved and seconded that the House be suspended for 10 minutes. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. House stand suspended for 10 minutes.
Mr. Speaker.
Testing, 1, 2. 1, 2, 2. Yes. Testing, 1, 2. Testing, testing. Hello? Yes, yes. 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 Put it higher. Yes, yes.
Yeah, 1, 2, 2, 1, 2, 2. Two, 1, 2, 2.
How's the vibes? The partner not talking much today, so a little later I bring the thing for you.
would now like to take a leave to meet with the acting Prime Minister, Honorable Dr. Irvin McIntyre. I'm asking the President of the National Youth Council and the Deputy Speaker of the Senior House to join me.
Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Honorable Octavia Alfred, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I had just previously laid a heavy responsibility on the young people, and I was moving into encouraging you with a few things that has worked for me. It's just easier to stay in your comfort zone and avoid risk. However, great things never come from being average. You have to strive for extraordinary. When you show courage in the face of adversity, you change your life and you change the lives of others. Do not take inspiration only from great speakers, but take inspiration from people who have experienced difficulty, but they never gave up. Sometimes the only way out of stress is to go through stress. Face struggles to overcome challenges in life. Many times, battles happen to help teach us a lesson. We can either learn from that or we can deny it. Go boldly in the direction of your dreams. Have what I call pop-up ability. Pop-up ability is when the whole world beats up on you and they want to beat you down, but you find another reason to get back up. Have pop-up ability. Every time you fail, you come one step closer to success. You are not scared. You're courageous. For some of you feeling little butterflies, you're not scared. You're courageous. You're not weak. You're powerful. You're not ordinary. You are remarkable, and this is why you sit here today. When you look back on your life, don't have regrets. Believe in yourself. Believe in your future. You will find your way. You are meant for great things. Be a person of excellence. Give it your best even when no one is watching. Excellence shows itself. What I know is that when you are excellent, people remember you. You stand out. Regardless of what it is, you become unforgettable. Appreciate your own worth and each other's worth. You are not better than anybody, but nobody is better than you either. Seek out strong people to befriend, to align yourself with, to learn from, to be inspired by, to collaborate with, to support, to be enlightened by. Help at least one person every day, expecting nothing in return. Don't let fear rule your life. Don't let fear dictate to you what you must do. A closed door is not the last door. And no is an answer on your way to your destination. So when a person tells you no, just keep moving. No is an answer. And know when you need to speak up. Know when you need to listen up. Know when you need to shut up. Know when you need to show up. Know when you need to cover up. Know when you need to stand up. And know when you just need to pull up. And overall, mind God's business, and God will mind your business. Acknowledge Him in all your ways, and He will direct your path. I ask only one thing of you today. After you leave this building, do not fear failure, but be terrified of regret. Because regret is what gives birth to all your failures. I just want you to know, don't give up. So move ahead and don't ever think, don't even think about giving up. God bless you. Jesus loves you, and I love you too. Good morning.
I would now like to call on the Honorable Lennox Linton, Leader of Opposition, to give remarks. Your mic.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. I thought I would have been introduced this morning by the speaker, the real speaker for the Youth Parliament. Are you the speaker for the Youth Parliament?
Yes, I did not mention. I'm doing the lead aspect of the session, of this parliamentary session, and then because I passed the youth age, so I will pass on. I'll pass on to our deputy speaker of the senior house, who is in his 20s,
All right.
to take over, and then they might see me maybe next day to just give brief comments. But yes, the youth will be taking charge of their session.
I'm pleased to hear that, Mr. Speaker, because this probably is the first time that we have an actual member of the Parliament who will be presiding as Speaker of the Youth Parliament and come into that position with some experience of sitting in the chair of the National Parliament. So, good things. The Acting Prime Minister, Honorable Dr. Irvin McIntyre, and other members of the government side of the Parliament, and all of the members of the National Youth Parliament, I'm very happy to be with you today. I apologize for the absence of my colleagues on the opposition side of the Parliament. As the Speaker indicated, they were not invited. And up to last night, we agonized over whether we should just ignore the lack of invitation and come. And then we defaulted to the good manners practice of staying away from places where you're not invited. And that's the only reason they're not here, because they would really like to be here with the youth this morning. And they're following intently from their homes. The National Youth Parliament is designed to expose potential future young parliamentarians to the fundamentals of parliamentary conduct and procedure that underpin democracy and good governance. It provides experience in debate of issues as a tool to securing the best legislative oversight and representation of people's solutions for nation building. In addition, it gives members important networking opportunities with other participants, facilitators, and mentors in the preparatory process. I know how hard you have worked over the past few weeks getting ready for this, and I can see the enthusiasm with which you have embraced this unique opportunity to develop leadership skills, competencies, and experience that will empower you to make a positive difference in shaping the future of our beloved Dominica. Congratulations. Love what you do together over the next 2 days. Strive for excellence. Do it well. Love the people you do it with. Empathize. Let teamwork shine, and love the reasons for which you're doing it. Celebrate your capability to lead change. Celebrate your love of country and your commitment to secure the best Dominica for all Dominicans. I note that your agenda this week features 3 resolutions. 1, legalizing marijuana can provide economic benefits, particularly to the youth. 2, COVID-19 vaccine should be made mandatory for all citizens. And 3, government expenditure on capital projects should be restricted to housing, the international airport, and renewable energy for the next 3 years to improve efficiency. I just want to tell you this morning, because it's very important, these critical issues in national development at this time have not been debated in the Parliament of Dominica. On the economic benefits of marijuana, for example, I remember making the point in the 2019 budget debate that in the basket of high performers in the global trade of agricultural products, that we can produce marijuana because of its versatility in providing medicinal, food, clothing, and shelter solutions offers the greatest growth prospects for our nature island economy. At that time, I felt I was throwing out an invitation to serious parliamentary debate of an important national development issue. So far, the Dominica Parliament has passed legislation to decriminalize possession of small quantities of marijuana. As important as COVID-19 vaccines are stated to be in our struggle with the pandemic, more than 2 years later, this matter has not come before the Parliament for debate. And in terms of the prioritization of capital expenditure, there's really been no specific opportunity that we have had as parliamentarians to debate this matter, even though we have tried from the opposition side to slip in some observations in other debates, much of the time usually against the admonitions of relevance from the Speaker's chair. You, therefore, have the first responsibility of shining the light of enlightened national debate on the way forward for the economic benefits of marijuana, mandatory COVID-19 vaccines, and capital expenditure priorities over the next 3 years. And I, for one, am going to be listening very closely for the pearls of wisdom, which I know will come from you on these 3 matters over the next few days. You're going to be debating, and debate is something you prepare for. And in debate, one of the skills that serves good debaters well is the skill of listening. So when your opponent is on his feet or her feet, listen. Take your notes. Because notwithstanding what you are prepared to say, there are some things coming from the other side that may merit your consideration in response so that you have a more wholesome presentation on the critical issues before you, and I dare say, before the nation. A motion of privilege is also on the other paper for this youth parliament. And as a recent victim of a motion of privilege in the National Assembly, I share a few thoughts with you today, hopefully for better understanding. We learn from the publication Erskine May, commonly referred to as the Bible of Parliamentary Procedure, that parliamentary privilege is the sum of certain rights enjoyed by the House collectively and by members of each house of the House individually, without which they could not discharge their functions. Certain rights and immunities, such as freedom from arrest, freedom of speech, are exercised primarily by individual members of the House. They exist in order to allow members to contribute effectively to the discharge of their functions in the House. And according to the Bible of Parliamentary Procedure, when any of these rights and immunities is disregarded or attacked, the offense is called a breach of privilege, and it is punishable by Parliament. The House also has the right to punish acts of contempt, and these actions, which, while not necessarily breaches of any specific privilege, obstruct or impede it in the performance of its functions, or are offenses against the authority of the House, its dignity, such as disobedience to its legitimate commands, or libels upon the House itself, or its members, or its officers. And in general, on this matter of privilege, the House exercises its jurisdiction to punish, in any event, as sparingly as possible, and only when satisfied that to do so is essential in order to provide reasonable protection for the House, its members or its officers from such improper obstruction, causing substantial interference with the performance of their respective functions. And I'm saying all this to you this morning because on the question of privilege, I am a victim of a motion of privilege for which, because I was not present in the House when the Prime Minister was delivering his budget statement. I know you're not having any budget statements today, but it is not a fate I wish on any member of this youth parliament. And so, I remind you in closing, parliamentary proceedings are governed by rules, the standing orders of the House. So, try your best to know the rules as best as you can, and challenge your speaker, which I know he'll welcome, to apply the rules without fear or favor, without affection or ill will. But enjoy your time together this week and look forward with great hope and optimism to your role as leaders of change for the best Dominica, for all of Dominica. I thank you. God bless you.
Thank you, Leader of Opposition, Honorable Lennox Linton. I now recognize and invite the Honorable Dr. Addis King to give remarks. Dr. Addis King is the Minister for Youth Development, Empowerment, Youth at Risk, Gender Affairs, Senior Security, and Dominicans with Disability. Proceed, Dr. King.
Honorable Irvin McIntyre, representing the Honorable Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit, Speaker of the House, Honorable Joseph Isaac, Honorable Octavia Alfred, Minister for Education, other members of Cabinet present with us today, Honorable Lennox Linton, Leader of the Opposition, other members of Parliament, Mr. John Roach, Chief Youth Development Officer, Mr. Firelander, Chairperson of the Youth Parliament, all our young youth parliamentarians, invited guests, the listening public, good morning to all. I promise I will be very short because I think today is for the youth and I'm not that young. Congratulations for being chosen as the young people to represent the youth of Dominica in Parliament. This is our first sitting youth parliament, and I am very happy to share this occasion with you as the Minister for Youth. It is indeed with great humility that I am honored to address you, the young parliamentarians, this morning. The value of young people being given a platform to express their views and their opinion is really priceless. It should therefore not be taken lightly. I encourage you to speak freely, but respectfully. You are all considered intelligences and thus capable of excellent communication. You are not too young to share meanings wisely. The topics that you will debate over the next 2 days are of tremendous national importance. You have the opportunity to bring forward your views and draw out that of your peers. You have the opportunity to explain exactly how you, as young parliamentarians, would like to see our country progress over the next few years. This is your stage. You will be able to influence policy decisions with your debate. Of course, I will not be giving my position on the issues to be debated today, since it is your time. And it's time for you to talk, and all of us as leaders to listen to you and listen very carefully. When you represent people, it is something that requires understanding and patience. So I urge you, remain calm, remain confident. You don't need to agree on issues, but importantly, you need to be respectful of each other's view. Being on an opposing team does not mean that you simply have to oppose. Every proposal has its merits. It is therefore wise to examine your position clearly and be almost surgical as you debate on issues. I am confident that each one of you would have done your research, and therefore you will be speaking on the topics at hand with knowledge and understanding. This is very important. It is actually very unbecoming when, as parliamentarians, we speak based on what we think or our opinions, especially when the correct information, the facts, are easily accessible. Use your vital youth energy to research and bring forth relevant information and vibrant debate. As the minister responsible for youth, I will be paying close attention to the debate over the next 2 days. Your voice will be guiding us as a ministry, even as we plan and prepare new programs for our youth. Other sectors will be listening closely as well, both governmental and non-governmental. We will all be listening attentively to you. So please take advantage of this opportunity that has been afforded to you. You are very intelligent, and I know you will have good debate. Only this morning, I was very happy to hear the chair of the parliament give this excellent speech. I know that over the 2 days, you will be doing great things and guiding us accordingly. Before I end, I wish to congratulate you, the executive of the National Youth Council, and commend you for your efforts in making this youth parliament a reality. I am delighted to be part of such a historical event. Your perseverance has surely borne fruit. I look forward to continue working closely with all of you in the National Youth Council. I wish you all the best in your first session of Parliament, and may God bless all of you. Thank you.
Yes, I would like to recognize the Honorable Dennis Charles in the gallery. So the youth, you have already started the mission. Right now we have the Honorable Gregory Riviere and the Honorable Dennis Charles in the gallery, and you are in the chamber. So, and again, I'm happy that the Honorable Dennis Charles could make her way here. Again, I'm asking all members of Parliament to give support to the youth so you can come in. In regards to the procedure, after the acting Prime Minister delivers, the senior members will leave after the acting Prime Minister to make way for the youth to resume their proper sitting arrangement. So that's the procedure, after which the Speaker of the House in regards to the youth will be the Honorable Philip Roll, a youth who is in his 20s. So that will be the procedure. So we'll follow after the Honorable Acting Prime Minister leaves, then the senior members, all of us there, would leave so the youth could manage their affairs. But I'm asking members, you could stay in the gallery or anywhere so you could give support throughout the two-day session. Without further ado, I would like to now call on the Honorable Dr. Irvin McIntyre, our minister. Is actually the acting Prime Minister and the Minister of Health, New Health Investment. Is on behalf of the Honorable Prime Minister, who is out of state. Prime Minister said he'd really like to be here, but you know, duty calls him. So, without further ado, I would like to call on the Honorable Acting Prime Minister, Dr. Irvin McIntyre.
Thank you very much. Honorable Speaker, Deputy Speaker, Cabinet colleagues, Dr. Addis King, Octavia Alfred, Fidel Grant, Dennis Charles, and Senator Riviere, Honorable Riviere, Leader of the Opposition, other parliamentarians, Mr. John Roach, Mr. Firelander, you, the youth parliamentarians, the media, and those listening at home. Good morning. I begin first by congratulating you on your selection to the prestigious and important position of youth parliamentarian. Today, you stand here in this most noble establishment to make your contribution to the debate on issues which are timely and of great relevance to your country's development. This is a significant achievement which places you in a position of genuine influence and power. From your seat in the House of Assembly, you will inspire your peers and demonstrate the strength of the youth voiced in guiding policy and initiating change in a society. I congratulate the executive of the National Youth Council for organizing this activity. This speaks volumes of your commitment to youth empowerment and the creation of opportunities for youth growth, both personally and professionally. I commend also the Speaker of the House of Assembly and his staff who have facilitated and supported you in this endeavor. The government of Dominica is extremely proud of your achievement and will look forward with anticipation to the recommendations you will make to address the challenges faced by our people. As government, we believe that our perspective, ideas, talents, and energy are integral to the development of this country. Based on this belief, we have focused on creating opportunities for you to thrive and take your rightful place as contributing members of a progressive society. Through this youth parliament, you are being afforded the platform to participate in our democracy and have a stronger voice in politics and the decision-making process in your country. This initiative is in line with our objectives to afford young people a bright future and the means to become productive citizens of Dominica. By your participation in the Youth Parliament, you have begun to recognize your role as essential players in the affairs of Dominica. Hopefully, you will continue to explore how you can make a positive difference in the longer term. My wish is that you will embrace your place in formulating policies for tomorrow, which will help to build a more stable and peaceful society and respond to the social, political, and economic needs of our citizens. To help you to do that, we are creating the enabling environment for you to participate in all aspects of this country's development. We are creating new jobs and training opportunities in hospitality, agriculture, entrepreneurship, and information technology. In addition to the well-established training and funding opportunities available at the Small Business Unit and the Dominica Youth Business Trust, we are opening up new avenues in small business targeted at young people like you who wish to bring your dream business to life. The launch of the Micro, Small, and Medium Enterprise Loan Facility and the Kalinago Development Fund at the Aid Bank both provide you and your peers with the facility to access capital for investments in your future. We have made significant headway in the past 2 years in growing a technologically driven economy to excite and empower our youth. Over 75 million invested in the advancement of the digital economy and the success of our Work Online Dominica program. We are moving with the times and positioning you to access jobs for the future. Through the National Employment Program, we have given hundreds of Dominicans a direct pathway into the world of work and the tools they need to succeed in their future careers. Furthermore, our record in the provision of training and education opportunities is unmatched. Over the years, we have increased access to education because we want to ensure you can obtain decent work, attain economic empowerment for yourselves and your families, and to achieve your dreams and aspirations. As there is so much more to come, over the next months, we will unveil new initiatives in agriculture designed to grow the industry and give young people a direct entry point into the sector. If they are inclined to do so and be innovative, we are willing to put the work in it. I encourage you and those tuned in to look out for these new opportunities to participate more fully in the economic life of your country. Certainly, through your participation in the Youth Parliament, you have demonstrated your willingness to be more active in the growth and development efforts ongoing in Dominica. I encourage you to stay focused on becoming dynamic leaders whose impact can be felt by the most vulnerable among you. Embrace opportunities like this one to develop your skills, build your competence, gain confidence, and attain valuable experience. Let this not be the end of your interest in national affairs. Endeavor always to be heard and to be the loudest voice of reason for your peers on issues of national importance. The matters you discuss over the next few days have relevance for all of us in this country, and I look forward to your spin on these things. I assure you, we will be listening attentively because your ideas count. You count, and I'm happy you get the opportunity to show all of us your potential as the future leaders of Dominica. Today, over the next 2 days, you have three very important issues to discuss. Firstly, the cannabis industry. As you are all aware, last year we came here to permit a certain amount, a certain quantity of cannabis for personal use. This was the first step. As a government, we don't just rush into things. We do step by step. The cannabis industry is also regulated internationally. Quite a few of our fellow Caribbean islands have gone into the cannabis industry, and they have ended up in some trouble because this is regulated by a lot of international organizations. And the last thing we'd want to do is to get blacklisted because of a reckless engagement in the cannabis industry. This is precisely why, as a government, we have taken a step-by-step process regarding the cannabis industry. We have been doing a lot of work regarding the cannabis industry, and we do not want to go the way that foreign nationals or foreign companies were to benefit more than our local farmers, which has happened in some of the other Caribbean islands. So that is the precise reason why we have a stepwise approach into the cannabis industry. Secondly, your other topic is the COVID-19 and the vaccines. You all are aware we were the first island country in the Caribbean to have vaccines. You are also very much aware that we have multiple vaccines. We have those Sinopharm, we have AstraZeneca, we have Pfizer and Moderna, and all the different vaccines, with the vaccines from Cuba and the vaccines from Russia. And we have made vaccines freely available to the entire population. So let alone the fact of being the first, and also the fact of making it available to everyone, we did not go down the road of shoving it down people's throat. We wanted to put the health of the people in the hands of the people and let them have a decision, let them have a role as to how they accept the vaccine policy that we've adjusted. So that is one of the reasons. And secondly, obviously, the third point we have to debate is on the government expenditure. And this, we've been here repeatedly in the Parliament to discuss so many different interventions, whether it's in terms of housing, education, health, digital economy, agriculture, infrastructure. So I think you have three very important issues, and we'll be listening very attentively, and we'll be getting ideas from you, which we'll use in terms of our policy making. So may God bless you. I wish you the best of luck over the course of the next 2 days. God bless Dominica. Thank you.
I would now like to take leave of the Honorable Acting Prime Minister, Dr. Irving McIntyre.
Mr. Speaker,
So I would not like to Yes, I would like to ask the honorable members of the Youth Parliament to take their appropriate seats, and then I would like to leave you in the capable hands of your Speaker of the House of the Youth Parliament, the Honorable Philip Rule. Thank you and good luck. I'll be listening attentively. I know you will make us proud in Dominica. Have a blessed day.
Okay, yes, everybody may take their seats, honorable members. We will now have opening remarks by the leaders of the House. So I now call on Honorable Hanif Gregoire to deliver some opening remarks, and that will be followed by Honorable Lakia Joseph.
Mr. Speaker, Leader of the opposing team, Honorable Lakia Joseph, fellow youth parliamentarians, good morning. I rise to give my opening remarks for this sitting of the Youth Parliament. Marijuana. In recent times, due to global trends, we have seen a greater need for small island development states, SIDS, in the Caribbean, like Dominica, to seek opportunities for economic diversification, which will in turn grow the economy and provide new opportunities, particularly for the youth. According to a draft report from the European Parliament dated November 9, 2021, a motion was brought for the resolution to the Parliament whereby a proposal was made for a union-wide gradual phasing out of the citizenship by investment schemes within EU member states by 2025. To facilitate the phasing out process, it is expected that a quota system will be established for the maximum number of citizenships to be acquired under CBI schemes across member states. From this, it is anticipated that there will be a gradual annual decrease with the aim to reach zero acquisitions by 2025. The intention is that the gradual phasing out will allow member states of the European Union, EU, to identify alternative means to attract investments and sustain their public finances. One may ask, how does that impact our CBI program here in Dominica? Well, the EU and the UK are to eliminate visa-free travel to the Schengen area for CBI participating countries, and Dominican passport holders enjoy free visa travel to Europe and the Schengen area. This privilege serves as one of the major benefits for the promotion of our CBI program. According to an article from Dominican News Online, DNO, dated March 13, 2022, one of Dominica's CBI agents noted that it is evident that Dominica is heavily dependent on the CBI program, given that it serves as the largest source of discretionary income for the government and the enactment of global legislation which will negatively impact the program, which will result in an economic shock to the country in the foreseeable future. Therefore, the government of Dominica must be proactive and take necessary action now to develop and implement policy which will sustain the country's economic growth through diversification practices. It was not too long ago, Mr. Speaker, in the early 90s, it was the late Dame Eugenia Charles, former leader of the Dominica Freedom Party and Prime Minister at the time, who pleaded with the people of Dominica to diversify and gradually move away from the sole dependence of the banana industry, the top economic generator at the time. The late Prime Minister had the foresight to envision the collapse of the banana industry, given that new global trade rules was being initiated by the WTO. Nevertheless, the Dominican people at the time didn't have the appetite to adapt and make the necessary changes. And therefore, the industry took a plunge, causing severe repercussions to the Dominican economy and people. Mr. Speaker, we the Dominican people have learned our lesson, and we will not allow history to repeat itself. After discussions with many persons from different walks of life in our society, including the youth, it is thought of by many that the legalization of marijuana to encourage its commercial use of medicinal marijuana, allowing for the free cultivation of this crop, will prove to be a game changer for the agricultural industry. The cultivation of marijuana will stimulate the resurgence of youth participation in the agricultural industry sector, and based on our criminal records in Dominica, there is already so many of the youth involved in the illegal cultivation of this crop. Also, with the advancements made in modern technology and the inclusion of the use of digital technology and renewable energy to aid in the cultivation of this crop, this would certainly raise great excitement and interest from the youth. Therefore, the legalization of marijuana to encourage its commercial use does have the potential to transform the agricultural industry and introduce new money into that sector, whilst providing countless opportunities for the youth to earn a living for themselves. Mr. Speaker, before I continue to speak on the legalization of marijuana and the vast opportunities that it will present for the youth, I would like to take some time to share with you a little history on the key legislation which govern the use of this God-given plant. According to the laws of Dominica, Drug Prevention and Misuse Act, Chapter 4007, Act 20 of 1988, which was amended by 15 of 1989 and 15 of 1990, cannabis and cannabis resin was considered as a Class B drug, similarly to cocaine, which means at that time it was a criminal offense for which many of the youth 18 to 35 years were prosecuted and punished for. After 30 years of the youth having to subject to these laws and its repercussions, it was in 2020, after consultations with various stakeholders and realizing the growing appetite and receptiveness for change to that legislation from the general public, as recorded in the local media, it was the government of the day who decided to take action and respond to the calls from the youth. According to the laws of Dominica, Drug Prevention of Misuse Amendment Act 2020, Act 16 of 2020, and on October 30th, 2020, an amendment to the said act was enacted by the Parliament of the Commonwealth of Dominica, making it lawful, not guilty of an offense, for a person to have no more than 28 grams of cannabis or cannabis resin in his possession. Additionally, it became lawful for a person who is 18 years or older to cultivate not more than 3 plants of the genus cannabis at the place where he or she resides permanently. The amendments didn't stop there, as the government found it fitting to allow for any conviction before the relevant date for an offense involving the possession of 28 grams or less of cannabis or cannabis resin shall be treated as a spent conviction, granting particularly the youth who found themselves in trouble with the law a second chance, Mr. Speaker, to strive for greatness and make a living for themselves, given that their Polish criminal record would have been cleansed of that stain. Mr. Speaker, let us be real and put things in context. I am a young man, but I swear, since my primary school days, I've heard stories of the Dominica Police Force making several attempts to crack down large-scale production and the sale of marijuana. But really, how successful have they been in that quest? Thus far, the government has taken the first bold step and passed legislation to decriminalize marijuana. And now, we are proposing for the government to move one step further and enact legislation to facilitate the legalization of marijuana, allowing the cultivation, sale, and use of cannabis. We, the proposing team, believe that policy that supports legalization will prove to be the most effective in minimizing the illegal trade and the crimes associated with it by instituting regulations. That policy will seek to break the cultural practices of marijuana, generally for recreational purposes, by introducing the utilization of marijuana for commercial purposes and the vast opportunities that can be realized from this industry. To develop policy for the legalization of this crop, a comprehensive market research will have to be conducted, taking into consideration the entire life cycle of the crop, from production to the value chain. This research study should focus on 1, demand and supply for this crop, the capital needed to kickstart the industry, employment opportunities involved, particularly for the youth, the impacts it will have on the quality of life of Dominicans, consumer expectations, scale of production, the utilization of the digital economy to attract youth participation, the identification of suitable lands, Mr. Speaker, identification of target markets for exportation of medicinal marijuana, the risk factors involved, the removal of restrictions and approval of licenses, approvals for limited use of medicinal purposes. This research study will reveal the viability of Dominica's proposed marijuana industry. My opponents may ask, why should we spend so much of our resources and conduct this extensive research study if we have no guarantees that this would be a viable investment? My answer to this is that fortunately, other countries, both regionally and internationally, have already taken that bold step and legalized the herb, such as St. Vincent, Jamaica, Canada, Uruguay, and the Netherlands, just to name a few. And therefore, we do not need to reinvent the wheel. Mr. Speaker, my colleagues on the proposing side will allude to the vast economic opportunities that have particularly impacted the youth of these countries in the upcoming presentations. Mandatory vaccines. Mr. Speaker, we live in unprecedented times. It will be recorded in our history as one of the greatest times of uncertainty that mankind has had to endure, given the increase in climatic events, warlike invasion of countries, and COVID-19, the unpredictable enemy. For this segment of my speech, we will zoom in on COVID-19. To attempt to fight against this global pandemic, governments from countries across the globe had no choice but to rely on scientific data, as no mathematical model could have predicted future developments and its impacts on their economies. Leaders had to come up with creative ways to protect the population through suppression measures, whilst ensuring that their economies remain functional. According to an article from the COVID-19 Care Continuum, studies on the economic impact of COVID-19 on EU countries were conducted and shown that the negative impact on the economy without the restrictions imposed on the people would have been far greater, far greater, Mr. Speaker, than those fact than that caused by the restrictions itself. Therefore, government should always keep that in mind when developing policy which seeks to find a balance between the suppression measures and economic growth. As the virus continues to evolve, policy on public health must evolve, given that we have seen the introduction of multiple strains adding great uncertainty with the pandemic. The COVID-19 virus burst on the scene in early 2020, and since then we have seen measures introduced for the mandatory wearing of masks, to social distancing, to curfews and closures, and now to the lifting of those restrictions and fully reopen as more and more countries are encouraging their citizens to follow the protocols and take full responsibility for their health. According to a WHO policy brief dated April 13, 2021, vaccines are regarded as one of the most effective tools available to countries to protect their people against the COVID-19 virus. Therefore, the use of highly effective vaccine will reduce the high probability of the realization of yet another wave, given that the restrictions are being lifted by countries across the globe. Presently here on Ireland, based on data from the Ministry of Health, Wellness and New Health Investment, as of March 18, 2022, we have seen a significant reduction in the number of new cases, only 23 recorded, Mr. Speaker. Although this new information augurs well for the fight against this invisible enemy, we must bear in mind that we are not out of the woods just as yet, as we have not achieved herd immunity like several of the countries who are lifting their restrictions on their people and fully reopening their borders. According to data from the said ministry, not even 50% of our population have taken the second dose of the vaccine. According to an article from DNO dated March 17, 2022, First Vice President of the Dominica Council of Aging, DCOA, has indicated that in 2021, they recorded the highest number of deaths among centenarians in any given year. The First Vice President has attributed the rise in deaths directly to the presence of the COVID-19 among us. In March 2021, Dominicans could boast of having the highest number of centenarians in the world per capita, 27 centenarians. Sadly, due to surges of COVID-19 cases on Ireland, the country only has 15 centenarians left, and that is the lowest that the DCOA has recorded since its existence. The saddest part of the story is that according to the First Vice President, the majority of deaths came from centenarians who had caretakers. So that means, Mr. Speaker, these innocent yet vulnerable group of senior citizens would have contracted the virus through transmission from those who are out there. Some who are yet to take one dose of the vaccine. Magwesa, Mr. Speaker. We can do better than that as Dominicans. We, the proposing team, believe that the government should not let the guards down and consider the high risk of another wave of this COVID-19. I know, Mr. Speaker, we are all exhausted of hearing about COVID-19, having to deal with the severe impacts that it is having on our families, our friends, classmates, and the country by extension. Therefore, the government should continue to develop and implement policy that protects the people of Dominica. For example, legislation that supports the mandatory taking of vaccines for all. If we wish that in the near future to see the back of this virus and enjoy the freedom that we are now seeing countries from across the world who have achieved herd immunity and now have it. National development. Every fiscal year, the government seeks to improve on efficiency, which simply means an improvement in its implementation rates for its projects. A greater number of projects being successfully completed for a specified time period. It is important to note that a high project implementation rate contributes to increased public transparency, reduction in project costs, a reduction in project duration, and the risks associated with it. According to an article from Zwickel and Smirk titled Project Management for the Creation of Organizational Value, the definition of project success continues to evolve. Given that the traditional measures of cost, time, scope, and quality, the iron triangle, are no longer adequate in today's competitive world, the ability of the project to deliver on the expected benefits is just as critical as the traditional measures of the iron triangle, and therefore, the expected benefits of the project should serve as the baseline used for project prioritization and budgetary allocations. According to the Ministry of Planning, Economic Development, Climate Resilience, Sustainable Development, and Renewable Energy, the expected benefits of the project must be aligned with the government's strategic goals, and therefore should be, 1, strategically focused with strategic alignment for long-term success. The projects must be impactful, contributing to GDP growth, decent employment, and the introduction of new revenue streams. Projects must be effective. Projects must be transformative, unlocking new capacities through new and appropriate technologies and methodologies. And lastly, projects must be sustainable. The project benefits should last way beyond the project lifespan. The ministry utilizes these 5 criteria as a suitable framework to guide the project prioritization process while assessing proposed capital projects for PSIP budget submissions. Mr. Speaker, we the members of the proposing team believe that restricting government capital expenditure exclusively for investments in 3 areas, namely renewable energy, housing, and the construction of the international airport for the next 3 years, because of its cross-sectorial expected benefits, will certainly improve on efficiency, resulting in an increased implementation rate for PSIP projects. Strategically focusing on these 3 areas by creating a project portfolio which consists of projects that directly and indirectly affect them would lay out a solid foundation for the government to commit to its goals and targets set out in the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, the National Resilience Development Strategy, NRDS, and the Climate Resilience Recovery Plan, CRRP. Renewable energy. As the minister responsible for renewable energy, I must speak of the great potential and the numerous expected benefits of renewable energy. Also, I will make mention of the development that has been already taking place in that sector in Dominica. In recent times, we have seen great strides being made by governments across the globe in making the shift from fossil fuels to investment in renewable energy sources. Fortunately, Dominica is blessed with an abundance of sunshine, water, wind, and volcanic activity, which indicates that the island has great potential to produce energy from renewable energy sources, such as solar, hydro, wind, geothermal, and biomass energy. According to the National Energy Policy, approximately 92% of Dominica's primary and secondary energy mix is based on imported fuels, with hydro energy making up the remainder 8%. The global dependence on fossil fuels exposes the country to risks. For example, the security of energy supply and its affordability over time for consumers from all sectors of the economy. As a consequence of the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, there is great expectancy for a significant increase in global oil prices, sounding the alarm for immediate action to be taken by the government to address matters of national food security and the continued exploration of alternative energy sources, for example, renewable energy, to reduce on the food and fuel import bills. Therefore, as outlined in the NRDS and CRRP, the government is seeking to establish an optimal, robust electricity supply.
Honourable Member, you have just about 2 minutes to wrap up. That is a motion that has to be moved and seconded by members of the House.
Okay. Motion for the proposing leader to have an additional 5 minutes to round up debate.
Seconded, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, a motion is put before the House for the honourable member to be given an extra 5 minutes to complete his opening remarks. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. You may proceed.
Saying, therefore, as outlined in the NRDS and CRRP, the government is seeking to establish an optimal, robust electricity supply, which will be driven by renewable energy, and targets have been set for 100% renewable energy sector achieved by 2030. Geothermal energy. After confirming the existence of an exploitable geothermal resource in the Roseau Valley, the government has made significant investments towards the construction of a geothermal plant in the said area. The Dominica Geothermal Development Company, DGDC, has been established to drive this project forward to realize its successful completion. According to the DGDC, the construction of the geothermal plant in Dominica is anticipated to transform the energy sector and address some economic challenges that we face given the several expected benefits attached to this project. Dominica will become more competitive in the business market. We will see a boost in economic growth with opportunities for employment. Green energy will reduce our carbon footprint and natural carbon emissions. The geothermal plant alone is expected to contribute to reductions of almost 40 tons of carbon dioxide per annum. Geothermal energy is one of the cleanest sources of renewable energy available, as it utilizes a closed-loop system which has close to zero emissions. Assurances to Dominica's energy security. The geothermal plant, plus the existing hydro facilities, with additional renewables as they become available, means that 100% of Dominica's electricity will be sourced from our local fuel. The generation of energy that will be more affordable for consumers, lower base price than that obtained with fossil fuels, and of course, no fuel surcharge, Mr. Speaker. Opportunities for exportation of electricity to neighboring French islands. Just recently, conversations were held between the government of Dominica and Martinique on the topic of exportation. The export component of the project will introduce a new source of revenue and foreign exchange for Dominica. It will contribute to the national strategy of becoming the first climate resilient nation in the world. It supports the SDG goals, Mr. Speaker, 7 and 8, which speaks to affordable and clean energy and decent work and economic growth. It will reduce our foreign exchange expenditure. It will position Dominica to capitalize on the growing demands for renewable energy. For example, the accelerated trend for the switch to electric vehicles and the increased demand for electricity supply due to a growing hotel stock. Green industrial growth for agriculture, manufacturing, and agro-processing purposes. All these expected benefits we are anticipating from this project, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I will end by saying that the future is bright for Dominica. And if we can work in unity, with pride and gratitude for country, working diligently and being committed to the task, I believe we shall surely build a dynamic Dominica. I thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I now invite Honorable Lakia Joseph, leader of the opposing team, to present her opening remarks. Honorable Joseph.
Salutations, Mr. Speaker, Cabinet compatriots, representatives of this honorable House, special invited guests, my Dominican brothers and sisters, both here and abroad, citizens and allies, Dominican youth. Good morning, good afternoon. Morning. The youth, Dominican youth, are undoubtedly and unapologetically the future of this nation. I, Lakia Joseph, and every one of you watching and listening to me today are the future of this nation. Mr. Speaker, I'm standing before this honorable House today to provide my contribution to this debate, but more importantly, to echo the voices of the youth across the island and to empower them to never be oblivious of their role in society and their ability to bring about change for a better economy, a better environment, a better system, a better Dominica. Mr. Speaker, I am sure we are all aware of the goals of becoming the world's first climate-resilient nation and transforming traditional Dominica into a dynamic one. But how? Legalizing marijuana, mandating COVID-19 vaccines, focusing on housing, the international airport, and renewable energy for the next 3 years. Mr. Speaker, how? Legalization of marijuana. Legalization, generally, is a process of removing a legal prohibition against anything currently illegal. Marijuana legalization, therefore, would mean that one may possess or use the drug according to the guidelines and limitations governing marijuana use. Mr. Speaker, let's take a very short journey down marijuana lane for one moment. And I get it. Opposing the issue of marijuana legalization is a very pertinent way of either being kicked or restricted from the cool kids table. And as the opposing team leader, I would know that very well. But my team and I are intending to do so anyway. Firstly, Mr. Speaker, let me make it completely clear that I care less about the casual adult use of marijuana. What I do care about, both deeply and passionately, and what our stance as a team leans toward, is the new industry that is trying to convince us that we are utilizing and consuming a natural product while fixing social ills, when we actually aren't. For thousands of years, cannabis has been used, abused, transformed, and repurposed. From a historic point of view, marijuana was made illegal and considered a Class 1 product in the first place as a result of the racist connotation attached to the drug, causing people of color in the United States to be looked down on for merely using the herb, even for medicinal purposes. Mr. Speaker, Genesis 1 and verse 12 tells us simply, and I quote, "I have given you all the seed-bearing plants and herbs to use." End quote. The most interesting chemicals in marijuana are CBD and THC. CBD is almost where all the medicinal purposes lie and has all the real and undeniable potential to help people with their pains, their aches, inflammation, etc. And it is totally non-intoxicating. But it is proven that you can take a shower in CBD while smoking a CBD pipe and drinking a glass of CBD wine and you won't even get high. But don't try this at home. Colleagues, while CBD is a remarkable part of our legalization plan, it really makes up a very small portion of our commercial market. The real lajachesh, the real dry cash, is being made in that other chemical, THC. It is basically the natural part of the plant that gets one intoxicated. Before the 1970s, THC made up less than 0.5% of cannabis, but over the last few decades, as we became better scientists and gardeners, that percentage of THC began to slowly but consistently rise. And recently, the chemists got involved and cultivation moved indoors, crops became extremely and unnaturally shorter, and they started using these harmful chemical pesticides and fertilizers in ways that we should all be really concerned about. And I have no doubt that Dominica will certainly be invincible to these trends. Mr. Speaker, cultivators may be encouraged or even mandated to wear hazmat suits while they spray these chemical concoctions on these plants, resulting in over 30% THC in the final product, far from what our grandparents' marijuana looked like in the 70s. If you know the story of Ben Cott, everyone, he began using marijuana, turned to other drugs and alcohol, became a daily user within a couple of months, and his drug use started out being fun, it became scary, and it quickly escalated to being necessary. And we see this in our society every single day. From vape pens to ice cream, cookies, gummies and sweets, coffee, suppositories, and even lubricants are just a few products processed from cannabis and contains THC in its purest and most concentrated form. So, Mr. Speaker, to say that we are legalizing marijuana will be far from the truth. Instead, like in 2020, we are commercializing THC. And I say this with no apology. The proposing leader argued that marijuana legalization increases tax revenues, income and job creation, and investment opportunities, which will be all powerful incentives to push our legalization agenda. But Mr. Speaker, what he did not take into consideration are the ability of law enforcement officers to keep up with shifting regulations, the concern of increased drug and human trafficking, the potential for decreased property values, the use and abuse of the drug by youth, and so much more. Have you, Honorable Gregoire, taken into consideration the financial, infrastructural, and human capacity necessary to further develop this industry? Have you, sir, taken into consideration the markets for our products like you said we would conduct research for? Honorable Gregoire, if not CBI and marijuana, then what? In all honesty, yes, marijuana can provide economic benefits, especially for our youth. But at what cost are we willing to welcome these benefits into our society? Health and safety degradation, reduced food security, negative impacts on the agriculture and entrepreneurship sector. Mr. Speaker, how? COVID-19 mandates. Mr. Speaker, we have to ask ourselves some questions in relation to the issue of personal responsibility versus what is required by law. What are we as individuals willing to do to protect ourselves, our centenarians, our children, and those who are vulnerable among us? What would you as an individual choose to do? The reality is, vaccines are being demanded by the vast majority of the world's population because it is seen, even here in Dominica, as a sign of hope, of reassurance, of the possibility to go right back where it all started, to normalcy. Mr. Speaker, there has been a mistrust developing in respect to the vaccines, particularly through the technological platforms such as Facebook, YouTube, and other information outlets. In our history, Mr. Speaker, for the majority of our modern settlement, we have constantly been told what we can or cannot have. And the fact that we have a very concrete culture of exploitation and colonialism, there will always be that seed of mistrust, and that those who are anti-establishment and anti-vaccine, as we see, will prove that they will do exactly the opposite of what they are told they cannot do. Mandatory vaccine policies, as defined by an article posted by Science Direct, and national authority policies requiring individuals to receive at least one vaccination dose based on age and access to the service. Mr. Speaker, since the onset of this pandemic, the government has had a very rigorous and comprehensive vaccination plan in the fight against this virus. February 9th, 2021, 70,000 doses of AstraZeneca arrived from India and 20,000 of Sinopharm from China on March 4th, 2021, and the others. Presently, 62,110 doses have been administered and 29,826, or 41.5% of the Dominican population, has been fully vaccinated according to One World data. Mr. Speaker, the rights of the Dominican people, especially the youth and those at risk, as outlined by our Constitution, deserve to be preserved and honored. Honorable Gregoire, have you considered persons with health-related complications such as lupus and other autoimmune deficiencies? Have you considered how we, as youth parliamentarians, are going to break the news to other youth that we know require them to take that vaccine without their consent? Mr. Speaker, how? National development. Mr. Speaker, let's talk a little about where we are as a nation and where we intend to be in the very near future. Let's talk about the dynamic Dominica that we are all longing to see come to fruition, let's just say in the next 3 years. Mr. Speaker, so you mean to tell I, Lakia Joseph, and the people of Dominica that the 6 planning units of the Ministry of Planning and Economic Development will come to a concrete conclusion that the best and most efficient route to achieving our national development goals are to focus on housing, the international airport, and renewable energy for the next 3 years? Mr. Speaker, how? National development, as defined by byjuice.com, is the capacity of the country to raise the holistic standard of living of its residents. Mr. Speaker, note well that this definition specifically outlines holistic. The level of development we are hoping to achieve here is one that creates growth, brings in progress and positive change for all age groups, but most importantly, provide individuals with some of the basic livelihoods requirements in order to thrive individually and collectively as a nation. Mr. Speaker, my team and I, and many other Dominicans, are not completely shutting down the idea of putting these 3 out of many important eggs in the basket. Our main concern is how. Effective national development, Mr. Speaker, encompasses but is not limited to the holistic development of rural areas, augmenting agricultural and productive sectors, broadening of economic knowledge, urban area growth, and ultimately eradication of poverty. Some might argue Dominica does not have poverty, but it all depends on your perspective of poverty. To you, what is poverty? And ask anyone around you, what is poverty? With this, the 2 main outcomes of national development is simply to achieve improvement in economic growth or an increase in the average consumer's income and the social progress of the people as it relates to education, health, and provision of public services. So, my fellow Dominicans, are we willing to allow the funds of our nation to be focused on housing, an international airport, and renewable energy for the next 3 years? Mr. Speaker, while we would love for the answer to this question to be yes, and we would equally love to see these capital projects completed and written down in our historic archives, We would love that our per capita income increase, our living standards improve not only with housing, but our labor productivity and labor utilization. We, as Dominican youth, whether in the public or private sector, should be so financially free in Dominica that I can say, hey, Miss McDougall, we go in St. Lucia for vacation. Get new ideas, new experiences, meet new people, form linkages, and come back to our home country and we excel. Mr. Speaker, how do you feel about that? Mr. Speaker, our main concern here is the sustainability in each sector of our economy. We will never achieve the development we are working toward if we neglect the sectors with the potential to create employment for and improve the living standards of our people, as it boosts the overall well-being of every aspect of our economy. Honorable Gregoire, how are we planning to build on the foundations that you so confidently outlined in your presentation for the next 3 years? In addition to the projects you are proposing, we solely focus on how are we going to, 1, reduce unemployment, especially among the youth, 2, improve our universal healthcare and education systems, 3, reduce inequality amongst our people and redistribute income and wealth, and 4, tackle economic growth and maturity within this 3-year time frame. Mr. Speaker, much emphasis should continue to be placed on our green economy, our backbone, agriculture, our blue and digital economy, and the advancement of our productive sectors. While we focus our priority on these capital projects, we should always keep in mind that strong buildings require equally rigid foundations. Hence, we should continue strengthening the economic and social pillars of our society, improve the intangible aspects of our health and education sectors, and invest our monies and expertise in alternative solutions. And as Honorable Gregor rightly said, diversify. So, Mr. Speaker, how are we preparing for these developments? How are we preparing our people and our infrastructure to withstand the external shocks that we are so vulnerable to? Category 10 hurricanes, highly infectious viruses, and even a world on nuclear war. How are we to secure the future of dynamic Dominica? It is pretty simple, my fellow Dominicans. We need dynamic leaders, dynamic educators, dynamic healthcare professionals, dynamic law enforcement personnel, dynamic policymakers, dynamic entrepreneurs. My fellow Dominicans, we need dynamic youth. We should be focused on building generational wealth, financial freedom and literacy, and ensuring that plans and policies are implemented and achieved. We should be focused on creating opportunities and a more conducive Dominican environment. Mr. Speaker, it is imperative to note that this era differs a whole lot from what it looked like in the 40s and 50s as it relates to national planning and development. Our ideas presented here today are seen as tools to development and not necessarily a guarantee. My dear friends, delving into the issue of marijuana legalization goes far beyond the short-term benefits, but the long-term goals and sustainability of the industry. Let us not forget, Mr. Speaker, a society consists of men, women, persons with disabilities and special needs, children and elderly. Tourism, technical services, entrepreneurship, and as I said before, our backbone, agriculture. Mr. Speaker, we are here today articulating the aspiration of a resilient and dynamic Dominica and ushering in a new era of economic sustainability, improved living standards, social equality and fairness, and a resolute and educated population full of hope and prosperity. My colleagues, Mr. Speaker, will detail exactly why our opposing position stands firm. Fellow Dominicans and parliamentarians, in the words of our dear brother, Daniel Pante, I quote, "Our mission and real victory here today will be the fact that we make each other, the youth, our families, the senior ministers, and our country by extension proud. We are not here to represent a color or be a mouthpiece to a party. We are here to represent and to represent firm and strong. Our real victory, Mr. Speaker, is to reach the youngest child and the oldest adult and to actually have our ideas and proposition written down in the history of Dominica and to reference today, Wednesday, 23rd March 2022, 10 or 15 years down the line, when we become prime ministers, presidents, and members of parliament. Mr. Speaker, it is our time. It is our time to shine, it is our time to represent, and it is our time to lead by example. Mr. Speaker, thank you, thank God, and may He bless us all.
Mr. Speaker, I move for the House to be suspended for 10 minutes.
I wish to second that motion.
It has been moved and seconded that the House be suspended for 10 minutes. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. This House stands suspended for 10 minutes.
Mr. Speaker.
House resumes.
Mr. Speaker, I move that a message of thanks be forwarded to Honorable Dr. Irving McIntyre for gracing us with his presence this morning and sharing with us some wonderful remarks that we could take with us for the remainder of the sitting of the Youth Parliament.
Seconded, Mr. Speaker.
The question is that a message of thanks be forwarded to the Honorable Dr. Irving McIntyre, Acting Prime Minister of the Commonwealth of Dominica. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Yes, I recognize Honorable Joseph.
Mr. Speaker, I rise on behalf of myself, my colleagues, and the National Youth Parliament of Dominica to extend condolences to the friends and family of Mr. Daniel Panthe, our fallen brother. An exceptional young man indeed, a very close friend, even closer than a brother sometimes. And on that day, when I saw Daniel, held his hand, exchanged ideas, and expressed our love to each other as we always do, I would have never anticipated nor expected that I would never see or speak to him again. So young, so intelligent, so strong, so passionate, and so full of light and love. Daniel Panthe, as we can all resonate with, was nothing short of a superhuman. Though not perfect, he was ever present, always willing and able to serve, and a shining light at the end of a lot of the dark tunnels we encounter daily. My fellow youth and colleagues, fellow Dominicans, Daniel Panthe lived a happy and fulfilled life. He ensured that he did not leave us empty-handed as he shared his ideas, his contributions, and ultimately left a positive impact on this youth parliament, Dominica, and every single person he made contact with. He was vulnerable, he let his guard down, and he succumbed. My fellow youth, never let your guard down. Daniel Panthe, our brother, friend, and colleague, thank you for the change you have made on earth, and may you sleep in eternal peace. Long live Daniel Panthe. Thank you.
Yes, I recognize Honorable Winston.
Okay, morning, Mr. Speaker. I would like to extend congratulatory remarks to the National Youth Council of Dominica on what seems to be so far as a successful staging of the National Youth Parliament. Let's give a round of applause. As the NYCD vision states, we are effecting the vision, creating the change. And I believe that this sitting of the National Youth Parliament is one of the milestone marks on that mission. And let's just continue to work and do the hard work that we are doing here. Thank you.
I too wish to give a brief remark. Let me also lend my voice and congratulate each and every one of you for committing yourself to this process. Time and time again, we have heard that young people are the future. But not only are we the future, but we are also the today. And how blessed we are as a nation to have a government which recognizes and holds young people in the highest regard. It is through our collective voices, and more importantly, our collective action, that we can work towards the attainment of our dynamic Dominica. I also wish to express my deepest sympathy to the family and friends of our fellow colleague, Honorable Daniel Panthe. I know he must be extremely proud of each and every one of us as he watches over us this morning. Thank you.
Announcements by Speaker.
Yes, so I will just keep it very brief. I just want to remind all the members of this Honorable House, as the Honorable Speaker has done so eloquently before, that we must abide and be guided by the rules of this Honorable House. I urge all members to observe and act in accordance to the rules of this House. Also, in the interest of the public, I invite individuals to please introduce yourself, your name and your portfolio for the listening public, as some persons may not be actually viewing, but they will be able to listen, and it will help them in following with the proceedings. Also, please remember to wear your mask and to follow all protocols as prescribed by the Ministry of Health. In addition to this, please remember that you have to address other parliamentarians through the Speaker, through the Chair. So you should not be addressing members of the House directly. This should be done through the Chair. Okay, so please remember that. And also, very importantly, if you're going to use any Creole, please remember that this should be translated as well. Okay? So please be guided by this, and I look forward to a very fruitful and a very engaging and inspiring debate. All right, thank you very much.
Notices.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice that at a later stage of the proceedings, I will be moving the motion marijuana legalization standing in my name on the order paper.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice that at a later stage of the proceedings, I will be moving the motion mandatory COVID-19 vaccinations standing in my name on the order paper.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice that at a later stage of the proceedings, I will be moving the motion National Development Priority Areas standing in my name on the order paper.
Public business, government business, motion.
Mr. Speaker, whereas the country's continuous evolving marijuana debate is implicating the need for conditioning a turn to an attractive new policy, and whereas the Parliament of Dominica on October 27, 2020, has approved a bill for an act to decriminalize the possession of 28 grams, 1 ounce or less of cannabis, marijuana, and whereas the government of Dominica is currently exploring the development of a cannabis industry in the Commonwealth of Dominica, and whereas prohibition has not proven to be effective considering the global presence of marijuana, nor has it provided a certain level of control, and whereas the marijuana production, trade, and consumption can drive increased investments and benefits for its greatest population of users, the youth. Therefore, be it resolved that the government legalizes marijuana as it can provide economic benefits, particularly to the youth.
Yes, honorable member, you may open the debate.
Mr. Speaker, I must ask, can I remove my mask to present?
Yes, I would advise, however, that you move over to the podium so that you're not speaking above someone.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Leader of the opposing team, Honorable Lakia Joseph. Chairperson of the NYP, Honorable Member Fiolander. President of the NYCD, Honorable Member Ashram McDougall. Invited guests, well-wishers, and the honorable members of this House. Good afternoon. Mr. Speaker, I stand here before you today tired. Whereas there's global conflict going on, the cost of living increasing day by day, and a pandemic that is still ongoing, in the 21st century, Mr. Speaker, we are still debating the legalization of marijuana. However, before I go any further, Mr. Speaker, let me just count it as a privilege to be addressing this honorable House today. As you know, as young people, we see it great in youth development. Mr. Speaker, as the leader of this topic for the proposing team, I would like to reiterate my team's stance and make it abundantly clear that we stand resolutely united in one purpose for the legalization of marijuana, which can provide economic benefits, particularly to the youth. Throughout my argument, Mr. Speaker, I will show you, firstly, how the Caribbean region is currently on the trend of delving deeper into the cannabis industry and trade, whereas with legalization of marijuana, many new and innovative business opportunities, both in-home and abroad, can be taken advantage of, which can be reinvested into youth development. Secondly, various Dominicans abroad are involved in the cannabis industry and have proven to be successful. Once we legalize the commodity on the island, we'll be able to provide support to these persons to expand their operations and create overseas opportunities for diasporan youth. Thirdly, legalizing marijuana will not only allow Dominica to avoid unnecessary foreign conflict, but rather forge new foreign relations and strengthen those of which that are already existing. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, to be on the right side of history, proving to our nation and foreign counterparts that we are an increasingly growing progressive nation which believes in proactive interventions as opposed to reactivity and stands on the principles that looks out for the best interests of our youth, our economy, and its sustainability for future generations to come. However, before I go any further, there are a few definitions that I wish to pronounce which will guide the premise of my argument and that of my team, so to ensure that we are adequately and accurately understood and our words not twisted, neither convoluted, and with your leave, Mr. Speaker, I wish to do so from my notes.
Leave has been granted.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Allow me to define a few of the terms in the moots. Marijuana legalization, as according to findlaw.com, and I quote, means you can't be arrested, ticketed, or convicted for using marijuana if you follow the state laws as to age, place, and amount for consumption. However, you can still get arrested for selling or trafficking marijuana if you aren't following state laws on licensure and taxation. Economic benefits, according to IGI Global, and I quote, are monetary, rational, and functional benefits or values achieved by a consumer post-adoption, purchase, and use of the product, services, ideas, or certain behaviors, end quote. Particularly, according to Oxford Languages, means, and I quote, so as to give special emphasis to a point specifically, end quote. And youth, according to the United Nations, and I quote, is more age groups, yet age is the easiest way to define this group, particularly in relation to education and employment, because youth is often referred to as a person between the ages of leaving compulsory education and finding their first job, end quote. Firstly, Caribbean currently on of delving deeper into the cannabis trade and industry. Once the commodity is legalized here, we can join in and give further support to CARICOM, which will strengthen our aim for a single market economy, impacting the CSME, and fostering greater regional integration, which have impacts such as other aspects of our trade, international labor standards, international travel, increased access to educational opportunities within the region, and more. Mr. Speaker, based on a document entitled Report of the CARICOM Regional Commission on Marijuana 2018, Waiting to Exhale, Safeguarding Our Future Through Responsible Socio-Legal Policy on Marijuana, and with your leave, Mr. Speaker, I wish to read this quote, if it allows. Thank you. It states, and I quote, "The CARICOM Conference of Heads of Government at its 25th intersessional meeting convened in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, 10th to 11th March 2014, mandated the establishment of a commission to interrogate the issue of possible reform to the legal regimes regulating cannabis, marijuana, in CARICOM countries, as well as the heads were deeply concerned that thousands of young people throughout the region had suffered incarceration for marijuana use and consumption, and many, after their first experiences with the law, resolved to continue with crime as a way of life. Inconsistent applications of the law had led to deep resentment and non-cooperation with law enforcement agencies," end quote. It continued by saying, "They were mindful too that for years, Caribbean citizens had promoted the value of marijuana for its medicinal properties. Increasingly, these claims appeared to be confirmed by emerging scientific evidence. There was also concern that without action, the region would be left behind because of fast-paced global trends towards law reform in terms of cannabis, marijuana," end quote. Mr. Speaker, here in our Caribbean region today, we have so many things to offer that we didn't some 20, 15 years ago. Many of our islands now have international airports, and even in Dominica, we'll be on the road to realizing our own very soon. There have been increased access to educational opportunities, more to offer than just our beautiful beaches and tour sites for when tourists come to our island. Instead, today, Mr. Speaker, we can afford the experience of luxury hotels, 5-star dining, and the list goes on and on. We are growing, Mr. Speaker. We are developing. But how fast is it happening? The next question on the minds of the people today, Mr. Speaker, and as a region, is what's next? As you can see, based on the excerpt from the previous read report created under the chairmanship of award-winning author, attorney, activist, and international legal consultant, Professor Rosemary Bell Antwine, the Caribbean region is seeking to delve a bit deeper into the cannabis marijuana industry as an addition to assist in economic developmental prospects. Later that same year, Mr. Speaker, an article written in November 2018 on Guyanese Online spoke about 3 Caribbean countries that have been pioneering the region's new approach to marijuana: St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Jamaica, and Antigua and Barbuda. The article stated, while Americans were celebrating Thanksgiving, lawmakers in St. Vincent and the Grenadines were engaged in a final round of parliamentary debates, paving the way for the establishment of a medical marijuana industry on the archipelago with the Grenadines group of smaller islands. The bill caters for nearly every aspect of a marijuana sector in the country, including those relating to supervised cultivation and one dealing specifically with cannabis for religious purposes. The Jamaica Observer newspaper, Mr. Speaker, quoted Chief Medical Officer Dr. Jacqueline Bissador Mackenzie as saying that the growth and development of the industry is being monitored closely, even as we are responsible for the safety, consistency, and effectiveness of the products that we register. She said that the government will accept products that deal with conditions relating to vaping, sublingual drops, tropical solutions, and capsules made from extracts, Providers must be officially registered. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, in Antigua and Barbuda, the bill stipulated that this bill, and I quote, "This bill must not be deemed in any manner to advocate, authorize, promote, or legally or socially accept the use of cannabis for non-medicinal or non-scientific uses or for unauthorized religious use." In cognizance of this, the bill provides for strict regulatory framework so as to ensure the effective and efficient implementation of the provisions of the bill, as it says in its explanatory memorandum. All 3 of these CARICOM member states and Belize are moving or have already moved to allow for the possession and use of small amounts of marijuana for personal purposes. Antigua has gone so far as to even allow every household to legally possess up to 4 plants, each for personal use. Most of the other states have publicly committed to relaxing laws and allowing for jail terms for small amounts of marijuana. In an article, in the same article, Mr. Speaker, the St. Vincent Agriculture Minister, Sabato Caesar, can be quoted saying, and with your permission, Mr. Speaker, I wish to read this quote. The St. Vincent and the Grenadines is ready for global business in medicinal wellness industry space. We invite the world to participate, Caesar said. He continued by saying St. Vincent and the Grenadines opened up significant global opportunities for cooperation among member states of the OCS wishing to participate in the international medical cannabis industry. He quoted, and I quote, "I therefore invite all members of the OCS with established medicinal cannabis policy frameworks to join forces for the sustainable development of what can become a world competitive sub-regional medicinal wellness ecosystem." End quote. The debate and argument today shouldn't be whether or not we should legalize marijuana. The moot goes without saying for itself. The question, rather, should be what established medicinal cannabis policy frameworks have we put in place in order to prepare ourselves for what is to come? In an article posted on March 30th, 2021 by newsamericasnow.com entitled "Another Caribbean Country Looks to Legalize Marijuana," it stated that in December 2020, Grenada Prime Minister Dr. Keith Mitchell, in a public meeting, locally said the country will develop its own model for cultivating, distributing, supplying, and use of marijuana as it moves forward to enforce an aspect of the Marijuana Commission report. The hope is that the marijuana use for recreational purposes will be decriminalized and or legalized. The Prime Minister said, and I quote, "Just like alcohol, just like cigarettes, marijuana days for decriminalizing, for legalizing, is coming too." That is a fact. The question is how it is done. What extent do we go to in dealing with the law as it relates to drug use is something that will come forward, end quote. Legalizing marijuana also strengthens the Caribbean single market economy. Just the other day, in September of 2021, Mr. Speaker, Jamaica rushed to the rescue of St. Vincent and the Grenadines after the eruption of the La Soufrière volcano by donating 10,000 premium award-winning feminized ganja seeds to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, according to an article from the Jamaica Gleaner entitled "Jamaica Medical Ganja Producer Aiding St. Vincent and the Grenadines in Reviving Ganja Production." The article went on to express that, and I quote, "The seeds were produced under a research and development initiative spearheaded by Pure Jamaica's G Life Farm and master grower Ed Rosenthal, Benjamin Lid of Humboldt Seed Company, and Dr. Marshall Emmanuel," remember this name, "principal investigator of the Life Science Cannabis Research Group at the University of the West Indies." Today, Mr. Speaker, so many more Caribbean islands are joining in on the fun, because that is what it is. We are seeing the benefits that the marijuana industry is having in these countries. St. Vincent and the Grenadines today, Mr. Speaker, is growing and exporting medical cannabis. St. Vincent and the Grenadines is charting the way forward, showing other Caribbean islands such as ourselves the best practices to follow in order to not be blacklisted, like the Honorable Irvin McIntyre said this morning. Mr. Speaker, I don't want to anticipate what the naysayers might say, but...
Honorable Member, you have 5 more minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Based on what we have heard so far, and based on some of the presentations we heard this morning, scientists are working towards making marijuana, ganja, Mary Jane, this herb, this plant, safer, not only for consumption, but for trade. Mr. Speaker, what we should do right now is ask ourselves the questions, as the youth, what do we want from this? Do we want more educational opportunities? Are we looking to grow in small businesses, entrepreneurship? Like I said, St. Vincent and the Grenadines is one of the first member state of the sub-regional grouping of the Organization of the Eastern Caribbean States, OECS, to be granted permission for the export of medicinal cannabis, according to an article on the Jamaica Gleaner. Mr. Speaker, the marijuana industry globally is a billion-dollar industry. And I think it's more than commendable that the other regional governments are seeking to tap into the vein, and so we should as well. Moving on to my next point, Mr. Speaker, speaking to the various Dominicans that have made a name for themselves on the international scene when it comes to cannabis legalization and the cultivation of marijuana. Once we legalize the commodity on the island, we will be able to provide support to these persons to expand their operations and create overseas opportunities for diasporan youth. You guys recall the name, the members of the, Mr. Speaker, for you, I'd like to address the members of the Honorable House. Members of this Honorable House, did you remember the name that I called earlier today? You guys remember? Dr. Marshall Emmanuel. Marshall Emmanuel is a lecturer in the Department of Life Sciences at the University of the West Indies, Mona Campus, Jamaica. He received his bachelor's degree in zoology and botany, a master's of science in plant production and protection, and a PhD in botany from the University of the West Indies, Mona Campus. Dr. Emmanuel is a principal investigator of the Life Science Cannabis Research Group in the Department of Life Sciences at the University of the West Indies. His research team conducts research in the area of tropical horticulture for cannabis sativa, its application, consistency, efficacy, and quality control through the cannabis value chain. Mr. Speaker, there's so much I can say about Mr. Emmanuel, but guess what? He is a Dominican, making a name for himself on the regional and international scene, working with genetics, working with scientists himself to bring about, looking for the lost strains of marijuana in Jamaica, looking for how we can advance the industry, looking for ways in which perhaps we as youth can take his research seat and how we can leverage it for the benefits of our nation. Another case I'd like you to consider is called Dr. Jimmy's. In an article on MO News, it reads, Dr. Jimmy's comes during a unique place in the evolution of the cannabis industry. Its growing acceptance as a legitimate industry and the demand for minority-owned businesses. To stand out, it was important that Dr. Jimmy's first focus on providing unique purpose-built hemp products that support healthy, hemp-free recreational living. Mr. Speaker, Dr. Jimmy's is co-owned and co-founded by Elvis Papa Edwards, a Dominican from Calibishi, Wesley, according to Dominican News Online. I can't reiterate this anymore, Mr. Speaker. Dominicans abroad are doing it. They're making headways for themselves. And as a nation, we have no legislature. We don't have anything that can provide support to them.
Yes, Honorable Member, you have just about 1 more minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I'd ask that you wrap up, please.
I'll make it very quick. Conclusively, Mr. Speaker, to be on the right side of history, we can prove to our nation and foreign counterparts of the increasingly growing progressivity of our nation. Mr. Speaker, we have huge bills to pay. We take loans, we get grants all the time, but at some point, the check needs to pass on to someone. And I thank our government for ensuring that they make headways so that the youth don't have to deal with the burden. But Mr. Speaker, we need a sustainable industry that can look at paying back these bills and as well being reinvested into youth development. We need a way, we as the youth need to ensure that we know what our goals are. We need to know what we want from the marijuana industry. And we cannot just come and say that, well, because it has a bad reputation, because there has been discrimination and a history with this product, with this drug, with this commodity, that we just flat out disregard it. We need to do what is important for our nation. We need to do what is beneficial to our youth, and we need to do what is right by this plant, by this herb, by this commodity. The benefits are clear. I don't know how to restate it anymore, but any sensible person can clearly see the benefits provided by this commodity at the end of the day. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, I recognize Honorable Adisa Burton, correct? Okay. Yes, you may proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I, Adisa Burton, stand here today representing the Shadow Ministry for the Environment, Rural Modernization, and Kalinago Upliftment to make my valuable contribution to the discourse on the legalizing of marijuana as a means of providing economic benefits, particularly to the youth. But may I ask, at what cost? Mr. Speaker, with your leave, may I refer to my notes for my contribution?
Yes, you may proceed. That's okay.
We must consider that benefits are not always tangible, such as money, and compromising something intangible, such as our mental state and reputation, is far more detrimental than the gains of a few dollars. In the absence of substantial medical facts substantiated by medical research and manifested in real-life situations, the medical value of marijuana is pretty much still up for discussion. Mr. Speaker, consider this. What if the so-called benefits have longer-term and far-reaching negative effects in the body that may be irreversible? Can the wealth amassed through the commercialization and legalization of marijuana restore an individual back to health? It means, therefore, should that be the case, the same health that it is purported to protect and enhance may be severely compromised. Are we willing to take that risk? Mr. Speaker, we're all aware. I speak to information in the public domain that marijuana can cause psychotic breaks with reality. It is so claimed that marijuana cannot cause addiction like prescribed medications, but this is far from the truth. According to the National Institute on Drug Abuse, NIDA, the lead federal agency supporting scientific research on drug use and its consequences, marijuana use can lead to the development of problem use, known as marijuana use disorder, which takes the form of addiction in severe cases. Who meets the cost? Is there a national program where marijuana producers will contribute to the expense of caring for people who have been affected by the use of marijuana, or will the central government bear the economic burden? Furthermore, we all know that smoking is a major contributor to certain types of cancers. According to PubMed.gov, the National Center for Biotechnology Information, NCBI, an online site which advances science and health by providing access to biomedical and genomic information. In an extensive study where a systematic comparison of the smoke composition of both mainstream and side-stream smoke from marijuana and tobacco were examined in 2008, ammonia was found in mainstream marijuana smoke at levels up to 20-fold greater than that found in tobacco. Hydrogen cyanide and some aromatic amines were found in marijuana smoke at concentrations 3 to 5 times those found in tobacco smoke. Mainstream marijuana smoke containing selected polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons were found at concentrations lower than those in mainstream tobacco smoke, while the reverse was the case for the side stream smoke. The confirmation of the presence in both mainstream and the side stream smoke of marijuana cigarettes, of known carcinogens and other chemicals implicated in respiratory diseases is critical for public health and communication of the risk related to exposure of such materials. Mr. Speaker, the cost for caring for cancer patients is astronomical. And in many cases, a diagnosis is a death sentence. Again, I ask, who bears the cost? The national economy, individuals, or the marijuana producers? Mr. Speaker, if the economic benefits as touted by members of this House is to be believed, we would see an exodus of farmers cultivating traditional crops move into marijuana production. Our nutrition and overall health would decline. Reduced food in circulation would lead to food insecurity in our country. As it stands, most of the food in Dominica is currently being imported, so this would result in an even higher import bill. We will undoubtedly see a very high incidence of non-communicable diseases such as diabetes and high blood pressure due to all the synthetic foods that we would now have to substitute for the loss of our natural organic foods. Although the popular saying that marijuana is for the healing of the nation, it could very well be the herb that kills the nation. Mr. Speaker, legalizing marijuana is easy. An act of parliament, a stroke of the pen, could see marijuana becoming a legal drug. What we need to remember is that it is a free-growing weed, and all and sundry can produce their own. Has this parliament done the market research and the production capacity to prove the readiness of markets at a sustainable price? Do we have the capacity to process the herb and extract its medicinal properties on a commercial basis? Mr. Speaker, legalizing marijuana may very well be the case of a man who cannot swim, but tests the depths of the water with both feet. Should the youth begin cultivating marijuana with the expectation that they are going to make money, in the absence of such research, they will literally be drowning in marijuana, minus the economic benefits anticipated. Before any economic venture is undertaken, one has to be empowered and trained. Fiscal training and fiscal discipline needs to be front and center. Keep in mind that marijuana production is not indigenous to Dominica, and a global market may require quantities of a certain quality that we may not be able to meet. Furthermore, the selling point of marijuana is its health benefits. From a pharmaceutical perspective, using extracts from the cannabis plant can have some disadvantages. Mr. Speaker, even with highly purified extracts, there will still be some traces of unwanted compounds in the plant, particularly tetrahydrocannabinol, THC. THC is the main psychoactive compound in cannabis that produces the high sensation. Mr. Speaker, as mentioned by Honorable Norris, we all know that pharmaceutical companies will eventually find a way of synthesizing the compounds in marijuana that have medicinal properties that will be considered safer to individuals. When this happens, the need and price will plummet significantly. No longer will the quantity of money that farmers would be making be available. And if that financial training and discipline is not there from the get-go, when prices nosedive, we may have a serious economic crisis on our hands, which would eclipse the loss of Ross University by far. Is the youth ready and trained for this undertaking? Mr. Speaker, are measures being prepared and put in place for that legalization? Or should we be looking at other areas with less potential for failure than marijuana? It is never wise to put all your eggs in one basket. And if we in Dominica are serious about natural cures, we should shift our focus to the knowledge and practices of our Kalinago brothers and sisters. We need to use the knowledge of herbs and traditional medicine in tandem with marijuana, thus eliminating the risk of economic fallout when marijuana is no longer king of the herbs. Therefore, I am fully convinced that decriminalization rather than legalization is the better option where marijuana is concerned. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask, has the Parliament given any consideration to demarcating areas for housing, forest reserves, and agriculture should marijuana be legalized? We know that there are some laws that may be in place, but are they adequate? We know, according to information on acspublications.org, Cannabis and the Environment, what science tells us and what we need to know, that globally, agricultural land use occupies roughly 1/3 of the Earth's ice-free land. And agricultural expansion, particularly in the tropics, is a leading driver of forest clearing, carbon dioxide emissions, and biodiversity loss. For us to compete in this industry, how much land will we need to sacrifice? We all know that marijuana thrives at higher elevation. We can be certain, without a doubt, that the legalization of marijuana will see the destruction, if not total deforestation, of our country. Our flora, our fauna will be lost. But with the clearing of land, our very lifeline, our water sources, will be hardest hit. We pride ourselves on having a river for every day of the year. But look around. Many of our rivers are dry beds that only flow during the wet season. Imagine, we are not even doing mass clearing on a scale for marijuana production. And our rivers are already suffering. What then will happen when farmers take to marijuana cultivation? We will see the introduction of pesticides and other chemicals aimed at 1, increasing production, and 2, increasing the potency of marijuana. Where do you think these chemicals will go? Into our soil and into our groundwater. Mr. Speaker, in addition to water contamination from agricultural pesticide use, eutrophication, that is the harmful growth of algal blooms, will occur in freshwater and coastal ecosystems from agricultural leaching. And this has been recognized as a global problem. Our soil will lose fertility, and our water will become contaminated. One may say that I am grandstanding on the issue, but this will not occur overnight. It will happen gradually. But legalizing marijuana will bring about these changes. So what Dominica will you leave behind? Is it Dominica, the Nature Isle? Or is it Dominica, the once known as the Nature Isle? Mr. Speaker, as governments regulate this crop, there is an urgent need to understand the impact on the environment. 3 types of legal cannabis cultivation systems based on regulations may exist: indoor, mixed light, and outdoor. These 3 production systems will affect the environment differently. We have already noted the impact of outdoor marijuana cultivation systems, the degradation of land, and the disruption of ecologically sensitive areas. Indoor and mixed light cannabis cultivation systems, on the other hand, though associated with less environmental degradation, requires higher inputs of fertilizer and energy consumption rates. As a country whose main electricity supply is from fossil fuels, we already see the increased prices of gas as an effect of the war in Ukraine. Will we be able to support the energy consumption from these marijuana cultivation systems and still claim that this would be economic? Additionally, our dependency on hydroelectricity would be further compromised should the forest be destroyed, leading to greater dependency on fossil fuels. Not only would this increase our carbon footprint, but both outdoor and indoor cultivation systems may be associated with air pollution risks from biogenic, volatile, organic compounds.
Honorable Member, you have 5 more minutes.
Noted, Mr. Speaker. That can be precursors to ozone formation. Mr. Speaker, how is this helping us achieve our goal of becoming the first climate-resilient nation in the world? Mr. Speaker, according to justice.gov, a website of the U.S. Department of Justice, marijuana was officially outlawed for any use with the passage of the 1970 Controlled Substances Act, CSA. According to the National Institute for Drug Abuse, marijuana potency, as detected in confiscated samples, has steadily increased over the past few decades. Mr. Speaker, marijuana available today is as much as 10 times more potent than marijuana used in the early 1970s. This increased potency of marijuana raises concerns for the youth today, because the consequences of marijuana today could be worse in the past, particularly for the youth. Mr. Speaker, I am certain that majority of us here today have at some point in our lives seen movies about the zombie apocalypse. Can you imagine such a thing in Dominica? The abuse of marijuana will escalate. We have already spoken about the negative impact on our health sector. Think about the socio-economic impact on other sectors. The government's health bill will skyrocket, leaving less money in the economy to deal with other sectors that they are mandated to take care of. Our communities stand a risk of being plagued with a number of mentally unstable, undernourished, undereducated, depressed, and other persons suffering from illnesses directly or indirectly related to the use of marijuana. Furthermore, we will see more burglary, vandalism, and even more heinous crimes on the increase. This really paints the picture of a real-life, apocalyptic, zombie-infested community. Mr. Speaker, I implore this honorable House to seek not legalization, but decriminalization of marijuana as already exists. Mr. Speaker, let me make this abundantly clear. According to the Alcohol and Drug Foundation, when drug use and possession are decriminalized, criminal charges are not applied, whereas drug legalization removes all penalties for possession and personal use of a drug. Until such time, the information is verified as it relates to the possibility of generating economic benefits for the youth. I propose to this House that we retain only the decriminalization of marijuana in Dominica. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, I recognize Honorable Shema Etienne, Minister for National Security and Home Affairs. You may proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to lend my support to the question on the legalization of marijuana, and as well to ask for permission to refer to my notes during my presentation.
Yes, permission granted.
Mr. Speaker, amid the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, on 9th April 2021, the Lasso Freya volcano started erupting on the main island of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, causing the displacement of about 20,000 people, devastating the livelihoods of Vincentians and significantly impacting the environment in the Eastern Caribbean. Today, the people of St. Vincent continues with their normal lives, showing a level of resilience and normalcy today. Why? Upon further analysis, credit this bounce back to the strength of the agricultural industry, one in which medicinal cannabis industry is given legal footing. A country with over 50 years of experience in cannabis cultivation, more than 2,000 traditional cannabis farmers, decades of experience in high-quality agricultural, commercial production, and export. Availability of arable lands, rich volcanic soil, suitable for producing high-quality agricultural produce. Mr. Speaker, for a moment, I thought I was describing Dominica. Decades of experience in high-quality agricultural, commercial production and export, as well as the availability of arable lands, rich volcanic soil suitable for producing high-quality agricultural produce. Mr. Speaker, though my opponents on the other side of this honorable House may disagree, I will list a few reasons why and how the legalization of marijuana can provide economic benefits to Dominica and create employment opportunities, particularly for the youth. Can you imagine being an A+ student here in the Commonwealth of Dominica, with a bright future ahead of you, with so much great potential? However, you went to a party amongst some of your peers. Now they're all enjoying a spliff, and they're doing what we call puff, puff, pass, meaning passing the spliff amongst themselves. A squad of police passes by and notices what is happening. You, the A+ student, who has always been responsible, is now facing charges, and your criminal record is no longer clean, all because of a spliff. Just imagine how that would affect your success as a young person here in Dominica, searching or applying for a job at any institution. Whilst in my capacity as Minister of National Security and Home Affairs, I am charged with the responsibility of upholding the laws of the land. This is one reason why I believe that we should reassess the relevant legislation to save the future of this young man, among many others like him, who may have their entire lives sidetracked because of that one spliff. Mr. Speaker, I'm of the firm belief that marijuana should be legalized, and I'll tell you why. Marijuana legalization boosts the economy, as more youths will have money in their possession, which gives them the power to spend. This is not an on-the-paper theory, like how my opponents are proposing. But in reality, this is a proven fact, as we see in cases like California and St. Vincent, where measures at some of the form of legality that marijuana may have made, legalizing marijuana can create thousands of needed jobs for the youths and have them off the street or the blocks, as they shall be gainfully employed to work on the marijuana plantation. You can hear the opposition asking, what jobs? What jobs can be received by instituting some form of legality to the cultivation of marijuana? Well, with a Cannabis Cultivation Act, as done in St. Vincent, there was an amnesty for traditional cultivators. This act serves to transition illegal cannabis farmers who have been cultivating and trading cannabis before the passage of the bills to a legal status as licensed cultivators of medicinal cannabis. This aims to ensure that these stakeholders benefit from the establishment of the industry, thus creating jobs. Mr. Speaker, let's look at the data from states that have fully legalized the use of the herb. Permit me to quote from the Economic Forecast Project, University of California website on economic impact of cannabis in Santa Barbara County and across the US. The legal cannabis industry has created over 211,000 direct jobs across the US and over 64,000 nationally in 2018 alone. I quote further, Mr. Speaker, the US has a total direct, indirect, and induced job count for about 296,000. Of those 296,000, about 67,000 are in California, with about 48,000 direct jobs. Legal cannabis sales make up less than half of the current market in California. In land like Dominica, where there are decades of experience in high-quality agricultural commercial production and export, availability of arable lands, rich volcanic soil suitable for producing high-quality agricultural produce. See the amount of jobs from the marijuana grower, dispensary owner or operator, the dispensary manager, edible chef, the bud tender, the cultivation site worker or trimmer, the packager, the product researcher, the laboratory workers, the accountant, the security, delivery driver, and much more. Mr. Speaker, legalization of marijuana has the potential to phase our black markets and take money away from the drug cartels, organized crime, and street gangs. A reduction in drug activity will reduce instances of crime and violence, which result from block culture. When youth are occupied in constructive legal activity, they are less likely to engage in antisocial behavior. Mr. Speaker, legalizing marijuana will result in the reduced use of marijuana among teenagers. In effect, Mr. Speaker, marijuana as a drug will lose its appeal. Instead, young people will see its growth as an opportunity to generate income and create better lives, as an opportunity for the education system to place more attention on educating youth about drugs, especially through the Drug Abuse Resistance Education Program, DARE. Crime will be significantly lessened when marijuana is legalized, Mr. Speaker. There is a direct link between crime and marijuana. If marijuana is decriminalized and no longer classified as an illegal drug, this will have an immediate impact on the number of related cases before our courts. The energy and desperation to evade the law will no longer be required. Legalization removes the monopoly from the boss and provides an open market. As previously indicated, Mr. Speaker, young people see marijuana not as an invitation to engage in illicit activity, but rather as a means of contributing to the country's economy and building financial wealth. The opposition looks at the proposed question on marijuana just as a recreational drug. This is the highest display of people who lack creativity and a vision. Marijuana and the prospects, the many products from the herb, is exhaustive. Furthermore, the more youth that are gainfully employed, the less opportunity for criminal acts in our community. Mr. Speaker, in preparation for this debate, I decided to have a seat on the block with the young men on the block in the community. And we spoke on the issue of crime and violence. And a young one man said to me, permit me to quote, "Boss man, to be honest, there have been times fellas usually sell to me, have made threats to kidnap me, kill me, and even take a jail for me because I owe them for the goodies. But I believe if legalized, I'll have a fair chance to grow my own and provide for myself and maybe even supply to the market on a medium scale," end of quote. Marijuana is also less harmful than alcohol and tobacco, which are already legal. In fact, Mr. Speaker, over the years, there have been conclusive evidence to suggest that marijuana has a wide range of medical uses. It is said to be good for pain and muscle stiffness, and is also used to treat epilepsy. There is also high volume of anecdotal evidence that marijuana is good for treating chronic pain, and chemotherapy-induced nausea and vomiting. While my opponents may insist on classifying marijuana as a dangerous drug and suggest there's an increase in the number of young males on the streets due to drug use, is there any statistical evidence linking marijuana to such use? The legal sale of marijuana will result in the increased tax revenue. Mr. Speaker, the economic opportunities from the legalization of marijuana are endless. More revenue into the state coffers mean advancement of public programs to benefit all sectors of the population. Increased tax revenue will be reinvested in housing, education, infrastructure, and other social welfare programs, such as the Yes We Care and the National Employment Program. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, the government has a history of diligent preparation and prudence in executing any project or policy that has been put forward for this country. It will no doubt ensure that the legalization of cannabis in Dominica will be done in a manner of yes, creating an overhaul of the system, but a safe, secure environment that our citizens will benefit. I can see the government establishing a marijuana commission to help regulate the production and distribution of marijuana in Dominica, public consultation, and even a curriculum approach to ensure that our youth are guided by the country's ethos as a responsible cannabis-producing nation. In closing, in many US states and in parts of our region, governments are forging ahead with marijuana legislation to create a greater avenue for economic growth in their respective countries. Mr. Speaker, Dominica cannot be afforded to be left behind. We should grasp this opportunity to bolster the economy. I thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to move that the House be suspended until 3 o'clock.
Do we have any seconders? Okay, it has been moved and seconded that this Honorable House be suspended until 3 p.m. this afternoon. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. This House stands suspended until 3 p.m.